Assalamu alaikum. We will start with Al-Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Thank you all for joining me today. First, I want to acknowledge the reason why we are sitting. Well, I've chosen to sit in circles. You've always heard the term of sitting in circles of knowledge. I love circles. I feel like all of our hearts are connected. We get to see one another, and sitting on the floor personally keeps me a little grounded. Okay? So that's the benefit. Also, circles are beautiful because we're in much like a pot. It preserves good things, and it sends off, good vibrations to one another. So that's me in circles. Okay. Now, my name is Asia, aka Asia, aka Sufyan. Just a little bit about myself. I was, alhamdulillah, born and raised in this deen, and have been a part of this community since I was young. Been in this community since I was young. Since then, I have left and I've been able to travel the world and be a part of various communities and different parts of the world, and seeing how things are done, and just learned a lot along the way. First, I would like to acknowledge this particular community has been very consistent. So I didn't want to title this building community, because this community is clearly built, and it's been long-standing, and I have much regard and much respect for it. I thought this was my first time actually doing something like this, but in reality, I had a memory that it was Sheikh Omar, my Sheikh, Omar, who allowed me this opportunity when I was about 12 and 13. I'm sure there's a video floating around, but there was a little conference, and he just gave me this confidence to say, get up there, So this is my second time, and alhamdulillah, the Sheikh Omar, and I say Sheikh because several reasons. One, yes, he's my brother in Islam, but he's older and he has wisdom, and his knowledge precedes me in great ways, And I've lived in the Arab world to where, though this word sheikh, it has such a high regard. So for me, brother isn't enough. Imam, it doesn't even begin to describe who he is, not only to this community, but to me personally. The love is deep, to have an aunt and uncle, as they would say in the Pakistani community, all of these years, who have poured into this community as the years. I've greatly benefited from it, and many, many, many other people. Alhamdulillah. The name of this topic is Before Building Community and Preserving It. A lot of times we like to jump right in. Okay, let's just build a community and let's start here. First of all, as I said before, this community is already built. But when something is being built for as many as years as it has, you have newcomers and new people coming in. Also, due to me being able to travel and be in different places, I've seen the rise and the fall of communities time and time again. Okay, so this is where the preserving it comes from. All right, first and foremost, Islam. As I told you before, I was born into it, but just because I was raised in this as a Muslim doesn't make me any different from anybody else, because Allah still chose me. We have many people who are born Muslim, and then along the way they went somewhere else. So I say, alhamdulillah, I'm so grateful to still be within the fold of Islam. And for anybody who has converted to Islam, there's no I'm better than, or because we were all specifically chosen, you know. So that's something that I always like to point out. When you embrace Islam, we understand that it comes with an oath. It comes with an oath. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. Sometimes these are, we forget that oath and what it entails. Right? That oath, now that you have embarked on this way of life, you are now responsible. You have to conduct yourself in a particular way. You have to honor certain things. You have to carry yourself in a certain way. It comes with a code of conduct. So when you have taken the oath, you are swearing by Allah that you are going to uphold the code of conduct. We see this when people join the police force, when the little girls become brownies, right? All these different types of things. You see that they dress a certain way, they talk a certain way, they carry themselves in a certain way, because now they are not only representing themselves, they are representing their family, they are representing their community, and they are representing their group at large. Same thing for the Muslims. With this code of conduct, the first thing is mannerisms and adab. And a couple of weeks ago, Sheikh Omar, he spoke about this, the mannerisms and the adab. This is the core of building community, simply because it gives us guidance on how to deal with multiple personalities in one space. A lot of times, part of the ending of community and groups and cliques is because of drama, all right? Drama follows us everywhere we go. But when you remember the oath that you have taken, and you observe the code of conduct, which is the sunnah, which is your morals and your manners, you will constantly be in remembrance of how to conduct yourselves with one another, right? Yes, no, thank you, shukran, afwan, all of these things. The manners aren't there just for good manners. The manners are there so that we can interact with each other. When the oath and the code of conduct is in place, and it is something that you check yourself on a daily basis, slowly but surely it becomes a way of life. It becomes a lifestyle, right? But in the beginning stages, you have to really pay attention, because there's a term that says jahiliyyah, right? So if you converted to Islam, a lot of times we use the terminology back in jahiliyyah, the state of ignorance, right? And you say, once I converted to Islam, that was then, this is now. But the reality is, jahiliyyah, being a state of ignorance, it follows us because of the environment that we live in. Here in America, we live in a very toxic environment, right? And we're very responsive to things, right? So there's popping off, and there's attitudes, and there's all types of negativity that goes on. So just because you're Muslim, right, just because you've entered the fold, doesn't mean that the Jahiliyyah ways are far from you, you know? It's something that you have to consciously make a decision of, right? So here it is, you were lost at one point, and Allah guided you. That was mercy. And then you made the conscious decision, because nobody forced you, to take this oath and to uphold this code of conduct, so much so that it becomes a way of life for you, right? So every day that you wake up, you must check yourself. Sometimes the code of conduct and the mannerisms and the morals need to be used as affirmations, right? How am I going to deal, how am I going to deal with this person? How am I going to protect my energy? How am I not going to, fall short of the mark of snapping on somebody, right? So when you put these types of things into practice, yes, it indeed becomes a way of life. Now that we have a way of life, quite naturally, we start to search for people that have like minds. We want to be around others that think like us, that upholds these qualities. This is the beginning of community. Okay? So before you say, I'm in a community, I want to be a part of a community, you have to do the work. Okay? You have to do the work of remembering your morals and your manners. You have to do the work of checking yourself, right? But once you have done that, you can't stand there alone. You have to come close. You have to be around other people, because when you stay by yourself, you get weak. There's a saying that an old man told his son to gather some sticks, and then you try to break the sticks, they won't break. Right? But if you take one, it'll break very easily. Right? This is how the shaitan gets you. This is how people lose their way, because they stay away from community. They think that they can obtain all of these things and be good on their own. No, the shaitan will get you at some point or another. Whether you do this in a righteous way and say, oh, I don't want to go down there too much, you lost your way. Right? Because when you took that oath, when you came into the fold of Islam, you said that you would honor your brothers and your sisters. You said that you would love. You said that you would connect, that you would share. But now you want to be zahid. You want to be left alone. You don't want nobody to bother you. That's a problem within itself. There's no benefit in that. So now that we've come to like minds, you attract the energy, right? We all want the same type of vibe. Now we can create something. But keep in mind that you have to show up authentic in being your natural self. And I say that because I've seen it so many times, I'm sure you have too. When you see like Muslims that maybe dress like this or walk like this or seem more knowledgeable in this way, you feel like, oh, I gotta be like that too. When you're not there, right? So then you see a little bit of pump fake. Right? You see people being something that they're not. You see a person conducting themselves one way in the masjid, and then you turn on the Broncos and you see him later, he out there cutting the food, right? Cursing and da-da-da-da, right? Be who you are. You know, you don't have to try to be something that you're not. When you see people that do have good and you admire it, it's for you to take mental note to strive to be that. It's not for you to say, oh, now that I'm Muslim, I got to boop, boop, boop. It's not a checklist. It's a growth list. It's a doing a particular thing long enough until you immerse yourself into the next level, until you reach the next step, right? Now, some people are dark, they dark energy, everything they know is rough, everything they experienced has been bad, and so on and so forth. Well, you have a fantasy. You got a fantasy of what it would look like if you were your best self. Use that fantasy, elaborate on that. And then you also have to counter in the fact that when you feel like you're, just in a dark space and negative, whatever, and you ain't gonna be something, that you're not, you're trying to be in something. First of all, you feel love to the best of your ability, your level, your journey. It's always important to remember. Being authentic. And then some of you may be too young to know this terminology, but it's something that needs to be brought up more and more. Everything that I said thus far, it starts with knowledge of self. People who come to the fold of Islam, they thought more of themselves. They felt like they deserved better, that life had more to offer, that, just like in slavery, during slavery time, and our ancestors was on the field, some of them were slaves and some of them wasn't, right? The ones that wasn't chose to remember who they were, right? You're not going to tell me I'm this. I know exactly who I am, right? So knowledge of self goes a long, long way. Knowledge of self is what has brought you to this deen. Knowledge of self lets you know that Allah who created you, and it says in this wonderful book that been reading the secret, the divine, what is this? Secret to
Secret
Divine
to
Love.
Divine Love.
She says, when you start to think, and I'm, paraphrasing, when you start to know knowledge of self, you have to say, Allah created the stars, the moon, the heavens, and the earth, the butterflies, the cats, the dogs, and every blade of grass. And he thought you were enough to be in it. You meant enough to be a part of this wonderful creation. That enough says that you're worthy. Your existence says that you're worthy. And then if Allah invites you to the fold of Islam, you're even more worthy. Sometimes, whether you grew up Muslim, you've been Muslim forever, you have to reflect on that in order to show the gratitude. Because this is not for everybody. Everybody doesn't get this opportunity, And that's exactly what it is. It's an opportunity to better yourself and humanity. Having these mere thoughts and understandings brings us to community. When everybody has acknowledged the oath that they have, acknowledge knowledge of self, acknowledging the fact that you are worthy to be in these spaces, and that you have taken an oath, and that there is a code of conduct, and it has morals and manners, and you practice them into a way of life and a mindset, and you fear Allah to the best of your ability, and you fantasize about being your best self, and you get to mimic other people around you to a certain degree in order to practice a good habit, and you sticking with the Muslims. You setting the tone for success. You're setting the tone for greatness. This part alone had me in deep reflection because, as I said before, I've been a part of so many communities, and I've seen the rise and the fall, and I've seen people stay away, and it's simply because they have forgot the moral fabric of knowledge of self. They allow people in their ill ways to run them away from something Allah said is beneficial and beautiful if you show up that way. Which leads me to the next part to say, how do you show up? How do you show up in community? How do you show up? How do you serve? Okay? It's not only about when you say I'm trying to be the best Muslim, I'm trying to be the best Muslim I can be. I challenge you to change that word and say I'm trying to be the best person. Because when you say that I'm trying to be the best Muslim, and somewhere in our psyche we say we're translating that as I'm only good when I'm around other Muslims. I'm only actionable in other, you know what I mean? And that's not it. It's being a good person, and those two are interchangeable. You are the Muslim, you are the person. Hello, it's together. Going back a little bit, or connected it, Allah. As I said, Allah has created everything in the heavens and the earth, and His magnitude is so great. And we are here to serve. We're here to serve humanity. You understand that it is only your good deeds and your bad deeds that, will lead you into the akhirah. That's the only thing that you can take with you. Right? So we hear this other term, do things for the sake of Allah. Doing things for the sake of Allah has a very surface understanding. But if you go a little bit deeper in doing things for the sake of Allah, it means that you cannot take things personal. If I come to you and I give you something and you don't say thank you, right? God, he didn't say thank you. He rude. He did. You creating drama unnecessarily. Because if you was doing it for the sake of Allah, it doesn't matter what their response is. It doesn't matter. Right? Because you know that's your reward. You knew your intentions, right? And then you tag that onto the sunnah. One of the sunnahs is what? Give your brother 70 excuses. Maybe he ain't here. maybe, you know, whatever. Maybe he got a sore throat. Maybe he going through something. Whatever. And a lot of times, I love that number 70 because in reality, we can really only come up with 3 or 4 before we show up. Like, I ain't never been able to get past 3 excuses. I don't think my vocabulary that heavy.
I'm done.
You know, so boom. When you do things for the sake of Allah, you can't take it personal. This is a heavy, heavy understanding when dealing with community because, like I said, we're dealing with personalities. We're dealing with you know, everybody got something going on. Mothers, we do this, we that, da, 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 da. So fine. The mere fact that I have set up that shield of not taking it personal preserves our relationship. Preserves it. And that's the hikmah. That's the wisdom. We're doing things for the sake of Allah. Also, which goes right into community, when you do things for the sake of Allah, you don't look for any type of praise and fame whatsoever. I admire Sheikh Omar because he gave a cookbook. It might have been every bit of 2 people in here. You know what I mean? That's a definition that I am doing this for Allah. I'm not doing it, you know, for the people and, you know, to be held on any high fame, right? And to the sisters, when we are in community, we be beefing about who made the best bean pie, who didn't, who cooking, who, all types of drama, all coming from taking things too personal and not doing things for the sake of Allah. You got to peel that onion back. You got to take that word home today and dissect it and say and give it more than this surface understanding that we have. Doing it for His pleasure. And if I got nothing out of it, I know that my reward is in the hereafter. I know that my reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what's better than that? Nothing. Right? I could care less about being popular or famous amongst you. I could care less about the titles and so on and so forth, right? So when you wake up in the morning, you ask yourself, how do I serve? Being the best person, being the best Muslim, that alone is going to get you from your house to your car without fussing them kids up. That alone, that reminder.
So I'm talking to myself first.
Heading to work. You have that affirmation in your head, being the best person, implementing the sunnah, being kind, being generous, not just to Muslims and people that we know, but to everyone, because this deen is to mankind. Right. And if you have had if you have been chosen to be in the fold of Islam, then you have a responsibility. All right, and that responsibility is just that, to carry it out. You should be an example. People should want to come to Islam not based on you convincing them that Jesus ain't God, because that conversation can go for years. It's the mere fact of your mannerisms, your discipline, your devotion. That's what people be curious about. What type of Lord do they serve? What type of rules and regulations do they live by? If you have indeed obtained that. To serve humanity is to serve God. When I was working at Methodist, I seen that, and it's been a profound statement to me. Every deed that we do is honoring and serving God. When you do that, you walk with, you have a level of nur on you. You have a level of peace and tranquility. When you constantly say, how do I serve? The deeds that we do go far beyond our knowledge. Everything that we do is for the greater good. If we collected $5 in here for 4 weeks straight, we may not see the benefit. Right? But if we were consistent, in a year from now, whether you're here or not, it served the greater good. They go to building in the back. They go this happening, right? And because you was doing it for the sake of Allah, your reward is already there. Right? Then you got a form of sadaqah tajariyah, right? Something that is ongoing, whether you are here or not. You have a responsibility and you have a position, whether you know it or not. The deeds that we do, when I say that they go far, understanding your deeds is like a universal banking system, right? You exchange the bad, things, and you replace it with good things. You give for the sake of Allah, you don't question it, and perhaps that has removed black spots from your heart. When you submit to Allah Ta'ala, hear and obey, this is like a very high level of iman, right? Meaning you don't need nothing from this human aspect of life. To have that mentality, to walk in that spirit, puts you in a very humble, soft, gentle place. When you have reached soft and gentleness, it reaches kindness and love and tranquility. So when you see people say, Assalamu alaikum, a heavy smile, that's coming from somewhere real deep. That's coming from being at peace with themselves. That's coming from keeping positive energy, right? All of that counters into community. Can you imagine? Everybody in the circle showing up just like this, the vibes are going to be high. You ever realize that when you come in the Master Hour, it's a good vibe in here? Because a lot of people have shown up with these things. And if you haven't, then this is your reminder. When it comes to implementing the Sunnah, there's things that we know and things that we don't know. And there's a bunch of careless things that we debate about. But you lose in sight. You lose in sight of the benefit. One beautiful Sunnah, coming back to community. If I dislike you, if we have a disagreement, 3 days. That's all you get. 3 days to feel how you feel about something, right? There's so much hikmah in that, because that's not cutting the ties of kinship. That's not ending relationships for the end all. Allah says you still are within this fold, and you get 3 days to be human and have your feelings about it. But you gotta recant everything why you're doing it, how you're doing it, who you're doing it for, right? And in those 3 days is to sit with yourself and say, you come out of that like, that wasn't that big of a deal, right? Then we got other things that happens in our households. There's Sunnah that says if you mad, sit down. If you still mad, lay down, right? How you curse somebody out laying down? It ain't. It's almost impossible.
Spare lost us.
You feel stupid.
Say that again.
You feel some type of way, right? So the deeds that we do.
Can you play that back to for the sisters in the back?
To know that things that are done are bigger than us and our deeds are universal, they go a long way. And I won't go too much into this because we'll be with the stars and the moon if you let me. But alhamdulillah, I had the benefit of making Hajj in 2016 by Allah's permission. And there was a point where we were stoning the Jamrah. And there's things that with stoning the shaitan, But me being me, I said, nah, this got something deeper to do with something else. Yeah. I don't know what it was, but I felt and believed in my heart that every pebble that was being thrown was shifting something in the universe. It was for a greater good. It was for something bigger than what I could understand in that moment. And it was a wonderful experience, man, because maybe I'll do a whole class on Hajj one day. It's like going into a different dimension. But so we might not always get the reward right then and there. We might not always see the benefit right then and there. But just know it's a part of a bigger plan. It's a part of a bigger, need, right? That $1 that you gave, it might be $1,000 to somebody else. Okay. Now, moving on, we touched Islam, Allah, Islam, and implementing the Sunnah. And I've said all of these things to build a sense of character for the person who is joining community, who is choosing to show up. Now you know how you should show up, why you should show up, all these good things, right? And everything that I'm saying, believe me, it's so much shorter than what I could really go into, because everything has layers, you know. So now, let's get into village. The village then and now. Once upon a time, before we all got into the city life, people lived in villages. And in our history, as far as we could go back, it started on plantations, right? The village had community that they benefited from each other in every sense of the way. Everybody had a job in order to get a particular thing done. Okay, so one part of this village that I'm going to talk about, the then and the now, is the relationships that we have to one another. We call each other brothers and sisters. We call each other aunties, right? The words that are coming out of your mouth versus the actions that follow. When you think of your auntie, and how much, inshallah, you call her, or you respect her, and you love her, that is no different from your auntie in the masjid. In fact, it's more intense. We create too much distance between us because we lack the blood relationship. See, but blood is irrelevant when you are bonded by deen. When I call you my brother in Islam, that's my blood brother. This is my brother by deen, where I shouldn't differ in how I treat you. Razak doesn't have more than this brother or that brother. When you start to truly look at your brothers and sisters in your community as your blood relatives, in a good way, because I know some of y'all be beefing with the family too. In a good way, with all those other things we talked about. The love is strong. When you look at your personal relationships, your husband, your wife, that's the only title that you think of on a day-to-day basis. But when conflict arises, you got to remember that that's your brother. When advice needs to be given, that's my sister. When you remove these titles of and come down to a basic level of how we should love each other. Like, if I can't respect you as my husband right now, at least I can love you still like my brother. All right? So that's going to keep something, you know, because people, they be ready to throw the towel in quick. Because you've forgotten the other roles that person plays. That's not only my sister, that's my aunt, but you know, it has so many different roles. So whoever is in your life, whether it be your children, when you beefing with your teenage children, you're already put them in a chokehold. You know what? You're still my brother.
You ain't speaking from experience, right?
That's still my brother. That's still my sister. And when you have that understanding, it does two things. In your when it comes to your bloodline, it brings a sense of balance to show the respect that needs to be there. When you're dealing with people who are not in your bloodline, it shows, once again, the respect needing to be more intensified, right? And us not just disregarding, well, I don't know him like that. Okay, but you still...
Open rights.
Yeah, it's still a family. And I love that Sheikh Omar always refers to us, and we're in this space, your family. We are your family. Let that penetrate a little deeper than the surface, because it's in a literal meaning. You know, we have more rights and love and respect for one another, more so than our blood relatives. So, understanding those relationships. When we use terminologies to say the Muslims are one body, that you have to take it in a literal meaning. To say, if you bent my finger backwards, Salim's supposed to say ouch. You understand what I'm saying? That's how connected in feeling we're supposed to be. That it's ultimately empathy. Having empathy. I don't think we have enough of it, to be honest. Real love. When you come to spaces that have real love, if I treat Tyrone like my uncle, and you treat Nani like your little sister, and we treat this sister like our aunties, right? We got this family of real love. So much so that when it comes to advising, Lord knows we don't like getting into that conversation. But we have a right. You got to advise your brothers and sisters for the sake of Allah. But if I give you case in point. My dear sister, not my sister, my cousin. She's my cousin. Now here's the thing, if y'all don't know, if you grew up in a Muslim community, y'all was this high, but if you made it to 10, they are no longer your friends, they are your cousins. Period. This has been a prime example of not being blood related, but being related. We show up at every function. There is no her family without my family. Now we into the second generation. I remember when Suhaila came up, she was like, are we really cousins? Like, because that's all they knew. Like, she know her auntie, she know her grandma. She's like, so is grandma her sister? She trying to really put it together. So she laughed at that, you know. That real love when it comes to family and unity, when it comes to advising, if there was so much love there, by the time you come to me and check me or advise me, I know it's coming from a place of love. I'm not offended. It don't bother me. But if we had distance between us, you barely talked to me. Last time I seen you at the match, I felt like you rolled your eyes, but maybe I'm taking it personally. I don't know. And then you have the audacity to come in to advise me? Of course I'm on defense because I don't feel the love. So before you go off advising people, advise yourself and say, have I shown enough love? That if an older sister comes to me, either I'm gonna take it like she's an old biddy who never, because she don't have a relationship with me, or I'm gonna take it like a grandmother's type of love and respect. I'll take that, right? Now, to keep in mind, for people who do advising, you have to. We have a responsibility to one another. But I need everybody to highlight and remember and to know that just because you are responsible of something or somebody does not mean you are in control of it. You do not control the outcome. And I say this to marriages where you don't like the way she covered. Well, you can advise her, but you can't control her. Your kids, you can advise them, but you can't control them. And understand that Allah's the one who is in control. When you lose sight of that, your ego starts to rise in a way like, I said what I said. Nah. You say what you say, and the rest is up for Allah to guide and to aid and things of this nature. That's understanding hikmah and wisdom. If I tell you this today and I don't see the change in it, it's okay. It's coming the next day or a year later. It will resonate with me because we all got different levels. So for anybody that got ego trip personalities, well, I'm responsible for y'all. Love that word responsible. Man, listen, you may be responsible for me, but it is Allah who is in control of me. So we tread lightly, brother, sister. All right? When you love responsibly, for the sake of Allah first, you have a much easier way of dealing with loss. You have a much easier way when dealing with divorce. Because if you understand that person don't belong to you. See, a lot of times our love is coming off of the hip of Romeo and Juliet, and there's this real obsession. That's my man. That man belongs to Allah. That's my woman. That woman belongs to Allah. And if Allah decides to call her back by way of death, by way of a settled life, whatever, you have to be content with that. Because you was already moving with the understanding that it belonged to Allah anyway, and He does what He chooses. Even down to your children. When you understand that Allah just left you responsible for them. So be kind to them, respect them, love them. That's it. If somebody sent their kid to a daycare, I can't be mad when she come pick up her baby. Right? Much as I got love and all of that, and that child was my responsibility for that 8 hours, when people come to get them, I have to understand that. And you have to understand that in a greater way when we talk about Allah. And how we mourn deaths, and how we mourn divorce, and how we mourn all types of things. Understand that everything belongs to Allah. Going back to relationships and advising, the other part, which is all encompassing of love, when we say I want what I want for myself, what I want for my sister, right? We say it once again on the surface, but I ask you to peel the layers back. What does it really mean? And this is going to go into community. If I got $1 million, 100,000, whatever, it's not that, I have to give that person that, right? But I want them to have that. So I got to put them on game. I got to teach them how to give it. Whether that comes in motivation, whether that comes in short classes, whether that comes in whatever, right? If you have good health, if you have practiced good habits with eating, right? 1, 2, 3, I can point people out right here that has not only learned these things, but they invited you to it. That's community. That's how you move in community. The village that once was, when there was a problem, that woman, that man, he could go to different people to help aid him in whatever his situation is. When relationships came to the city and we no longer had village or community, we started to suck the lives out of each other in relationships. A lot of marriages do not survive because of how much we are pulling from one another. Your husband is to provide and protect. Right? Sometimes we want them to be this and this and all these other roles. And same thing for the women. We nurture, we give what you want her to be, your counseling, your therapy. You're putting all this on her, you're putting all this on him, and it's straining the relationship. So utilize your community, utilize the people around you. When you got something going on, seek advice outside in trusting spaces, This is how relationships survive, because you are able to put things in its proper place. A lot of people know I go to Africa a lot. The one thing I see and love and observe in Africa is that they go to their husband, they done with it, they go to the sister. And it'd be a whole sister thing for the rest of the day or what have you. And this is where, when you sit in circles of women, you release oxytocin. Right? Some of our conversations, there's so much, benefit in being with the same, sex. The brothers, they have the same exact thing. This is where community comes in. When you talk about marriages alone, marriages have is one of the main pillars in community. And I think of auntie and uncle in this community. Brother over my sister's arena, long marriage, right? They see that their marriage is more than just about those two people, but it's about everybody involved. And Allah knows best. Man, Allah forbid, but if the sister had left the brother years ago, would he be the brother that he is today? Probably not. Because we contribute so much, it's a strong foundation. Today people throw the towel in so quickly, not realizing the the effect that it will have on not only the children but the community at large, how everybody will be affected. And it goes back to my point of saying I've seen the rise and the fall of communities, and it has happened a lot of times with divorce. Right? So when you bring those two things together, about how you benefit from your community and how the marriage is the foundation, you have to understand that the marriage holds community together and the community holds marriages together. Don't lose sight of that. Don't lose sight of that. Your marriage is sustainable because you're utilizing your community. Your marriage is a core thing within the community that's keeping everybody together. Because guess what? If you get a divorce, everybody who was friends with her and friends with the friendships end, we going to a different masjid, we not. It blows up. And that's because you thought it was all about you. You thought everything that you did in your marriage and in your relationship was solely about the two people in front of you. And that's not the case. Okay.
That's a good one.
Community. What is the goal? What is the needs? What is the wants? What does it do? It holds tradition. It holds each other accountable. Right? Community looks a lot different than a lot of our brothers who found Islam behind the wall, and now they have to deal with the real world. Islam, and for those who grew up in community, and if you ever have the pleasure of moving to a Muslim country or going to a Muslim country, you'll see there's a huge difference of a Muslim community and a Muslim world. And I really believe that has played a lot on my insight and my ability to be merciful and understanding of different people in different ways and different understandings, because in a Muslim world, you see it all. Privacy. In the community, we all show up in a little space, try to be good, you know. But in a Muslim world, you know, there's drugs, there's sex, there's alcohol, there's all types of stuff that we refrain from and hold tight to not doing, but it's a lot different in the Muslim world, right? Learning to conduct yourself in that type of space allows you to have mercy on one another, you know. There's so much to be learned when you learn about Islam in a secluded place, whether it's behind a wall or if you are up in the mountains somewhere by yourself. Because when you get down here with the real people and you really start interacting, that's when you really test it. That's when you're really about to say, am I really about this life? Am I really, you know, calling to what it is that I believe in, right? And one piece of my poetry, I said, you know, some people, I mean, we differ, because some people have seen the world and others have only seen the world that they know. Right? That's me, that's not. In conclusion, kind of conclusion, almost to the conclusion. We have community, the unity, the future, community at large. This all goes back to those questions that I asked a second ago. What is the goal? What are your needs? What are your personal needs? What are we lacking? Right? You come and you sit in these circles and you put it out there so that we know what it is that we have to work on. Right? When we speak about community, it's not just Assalamu alaikum, let's pray together, let's and bounce. It's so much more. And this goes back to the relationships. I don't see none of y'all to talk to y'all until next Friday, and that's if I come. Right? So if I really wanted what I want from my sister, what I want from myself, I know that I have a good that needs to be spread within this space. She can learn something from me, I can learn something from her. The sisters that I know personally in this group, right, from the cooks to the homemakers and people who know how to make all types of shea butters and creams and things to help you heal and how, man, you bring that in this pot, let it boil. And once it cools off, everybody can get a sip and benefit from it greatly. So don't stay away thinking that you don't have something to offer. You do. Y'all put too much pressure on the imam or the person on the minbar to give everything, to try to get everything you need out of that 1 hour. You're not. Half the things that you hear on Friday, you be like, man, that was good. You be hyped for a solid 2 hours before it done wore out. Like, you ain't call that sister, man. You ain't know what you want. Let me tell you what it was about. Matter of fact, he was talking about this. Maybe we should boom, boom, boom. Maybe there go to minds. There go to like mind. There go to intention. What's the intention? I want you to be good. I want to be great. We can be great together. What does it go back to? The sticks and not being broken. Too many of us are off on our own, just dwindling in the air, man. You got to come back. You got to come back to these spaces because you ain't doing good on your own. You're not. You think you are because you only see yourself in the space. You ain't even being tested with half the things you know. Come on now, be for real.
I'm getting everything you need.
Right. Now, here's another point that I want to bring home. Leaders. We respect our leaders, right? But we got to be mindful in the respect that we give to leaders, right? We're not fans. Right? We have to show respect, but we're not fans. We're not riding coattails and all that type of things, right? Because what happens is sometimes you raise that person too high, and you break your brother's back. You think that he is not flawed. In reality, he is. And then you see something happening and trickle down. Brother, Allah exposed him. Oh, he got caught doing X, Y, and Z. Two things that's happening. The person who was leading lost sight. They forgot. You got to check your niyat 3 times before you do something. While you're doing it and after you do it. Because sometimes you'll get caught up in the popularity and the fame. And this is to any leaders that are out there. And you lose sight of it. And then Allah winds up exposing you. It is good to go to other spaces and acknowledge and observe, right? We not people like, oh, I don't go to the Pentecostal because of the Baptist. We're not supposed to be divided like that because we have to benefit the community at large. So let's say right here in this small space, we have all collectively obtained the best mannerisms and the best whatever and the that's not supposed to stay in this wall. You're supposed to go to that other masjid and they supposed to be like, oh, it's a nur that follows you. It's a light. Where y'all go? What y'all teach? What y'all learning over there? You understand what I'm saying? And then you bring it back. And then sometimes you got to step out, learn something, and then bring it back. Because we're not in this community. We're a part of the community at large. And sometimes if you don't step out, you will take your leaders and your sheikhs for worship. Right? If you take your knowledge like this, tunnel vision, it's part of the fall of the community. I've seen the rise and the fall. The rise and the fall has also happened because people have forgot that Allah was the all-seer and the all-knowing. They forgot those beginning things that I talked about, code of conduct, mannerisms. They forgot to be intentional. So you see communities fall because people have forgot along the way. Verily, the reminder benefits the believer. In this community alone, at large, San Antonio, Texas, I have the privilege, and many other people have the privilege of speaking. I'm going to say many other people. I'm saying if you're 40, you can speak over 40 and up. You can talk about the communities. And I'm talking about from this masjid to that masjid, and this masjid, and the differing, and the bickering, and so on and so forth. we are never going to be on the same page. The great scholars before us and prophets before us have all said that we will all differ in matters and issues, right? Once again, we're responsible but not in control. You cannot cut yourself off from the Muslims at large. You still have to engage in some type of way. You cannot allow 1995's beef to be the beef for the future. Straight up. You got people like, I don't go down that. Why? I don't know, my great-grandfather was kind of beefed up with his great-granddad. What? And we lose every time. We lose every time. And you, not only do you unify with the like minds, then we unify amongst culture. And then we unify. Right here in San Antonio alone, you got 5, I'm going to say black masjids. And when I say black masjids, it's because it's predominantly black. Right? 5 black masjids, and 9 times out of 10, none of them talk to each other, whether they're differing on Islamic views or they're differing because of personal beef. But you're losing sight of community, right? And we can go into black businesses and black people in general. We always struggling because we lack unity. Look, sis, you don't gotta like, you know, how I believe or how I cover, but look, I got this shea butter. And you need this in your life. And it don't make sense that you keep going to the beauty supply store to buy it when mine's is more natural and mine's is more, you know? So when you start creating those conversations and putting the beef aside, you'll realize that you can benefit from each other economically, which you need it, right? Circulating the dollar within your own community. And then regardless of how you feel, regardless of what you thought you knew, go back to the basics. I don't really like, but you know what? That's personal. For the sake of Allah, I'm going to deal with you. You know what I'm saying? For the sake of Allah, I'm going to support the business. For the sake of Allah, you got to get back to that. You got to be rooted in that. Communities have failed because when I say that they forgot that Allah was the all-seer, we've seen things that heavy, bad, nasty, ugly things. What, rape, misfortune, all of it. Because in secret, molestation, all of these churches and mosques throughout the world, it don't even matter if you're Muslim or Christian or whatever. When you're in a dark space and you have somebody that's vulnerable and you feel like don't nobody see you, you've lost sight that Allah was the all-seer. So that whole community had to blow up in your face because you were oppressing people. You were oppressing them. So just because, you know, it gets burnt down doesn't mean that it doesn't get rebuilt. And I speak personally to a lot of the women and people in my community that I grew up with. Most of us ain't trying to deal, nah, man, because we scarred. We done experienced it already. But now we got to see that it's a new day. Yeah. And we've learned from our mistakes. And we have a foundation of how we should be operating. We got to reset the tone. We got to do it for our children. Because now, today, our children get more dawah from TikTok and God knows what else, right? They're more influenced. It holds more weight. Back in the day, Muslims, our community, we was tight. Wait, scroll over there, fly. Like, how that Muslim girl, and it was like 10 of them all going to the same, you know, it was a movement to where as though other people acknowledged that we didn't want to be a part of them, they wanted to be a part of us. Right? So when you think about making hijrah, right, or moving to the land, the hijrah doesn't always mean going to the land of Muslims or packing your stuff up and moving far. It just simply means to be around people that are trying to get it like you. That think like you, that operate and build from that. You know? I guarantee you, if this master was here, and then we had the halal meat bar here, and we had this and other, you got people that's moving back to the east side just to be within community. Yeah. I've seen it happen. You had people from Buffalo moving to East Orange, New Jersey for Ahl Sunnah. Ahl Sunnah was one of the most thriving, biggest Muslim communities the East Coast had ever seen. That's because people was coming from everywhere to fill that spot up. This conversation to me was very important because I feel like I have, this is where I started. And I'm going out, and I gotta come. You gotta come back. You gotta come back, and you gotta benefit your community for what you have learned and what you knew, and so, or you know, what you've learned along the way, right? And then you also have to acknowledge that the beginning are always terrible beginnings. It has substance. It has something that you can benefit from. Maybe you didn't see it when you was younger, talking to myself, but I see it now. You know, sometimes that advice and what was said, I didn't get it. I had to go out here, experience this and experience that. I get it now.
Around a little bit.
Yeah. People don't realize, you know, say what you want about this community, but one thing that you can say nationwide, when you come into these type of spaces, you're going to be embraced. It's going to come with love. It's like, hey, sister. You feel it. There's a vibe. You can go to other places and you won't necessarily feel that vibe. Not only, you know, due to race and this and that, but just simply due to they just ain't got it like that. You know? And the ultimate goal, if all the different sets of Muslims, and that not to get political, but if we're all very tunnel vision and what our idea of Islam should look like and should be. But if you remove those blinders just for a second and you say, this group of brothers, they good with money. And this group, they good with their mannerisms. And this group, they good with seeking knowledge. And this group, then you will embody this whole concept of being a Muslim from head to toe. That's what the ultimate unity is. We wasn't designed to divide it like this. And it's okay to have that understanding and say that we can agree to disagree, you know, but we got to do it all going back to that code of conduct, all going back to those simple things. That's the only way. That's the only way it will thrive. So with that being said, I'm going to wrap this up, and I will say that anything that I have said that was good and that you benefited from came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And anything that I have said that was wrong and misguided verily is from my own desires and from the shaitan. I ask that you go home and you peel the onion back on certain words and have a deeper understanding as to what these words mean and how you should show up. I want you to go home and say that I am enough and I am worthy to be in spaces to grow, whether it's mentally, physically, health-wise, financially. And I can't do that by myself. The community is not an option, it's a necessity. It's a necessity. Not only for yourself, but for your children and your marriages. If you want to thrive, you better get with them people that think like you and want good like you. That's the only way you're going to find success.
We appreciate you, sister, man. Allah reward you for this.
Hey.